Chosen one, something within you has been sensing a shift. Not noise, not confusion, just a quiet awareness that life is moving toward a turning point. You may not be able to explain it clearly, but you feel it in how your prayers sound lately, in how old desires no longer satisfy, and in how familiar patterns feel too small. This message meets you right there. What is approaching is not random, and it is not ordinary. It is unfamiliar because God often introduces change without repeating old patterns. When He prepares to reveal something uncommon, He first prepares the person who will carry it. This is why your recent season may have felt intense. Pressure has a way of exposing what cannot travel with you into what comes next. Comfort, reliance on approval, old habits, and even certain expectations quietly lose their grip. What remains is hunger for clarity, depth, and purpose. That hunger is not weakness, it is readiness. God has always worked through people who were willing to be refined before being revealed. What feels like delay is often alignment happening where others cannot see it. Throughout history, moments of significant change were preceded by individuals who learned to trust God beyond familiarity. Paths opened where none had existed before, not because circumstances improved, but because obedience deepened. The new thing God releases does not always look dramatic at first. Often it begins internally, with perspective shifting before conditions do. That internal shift is where courage is formed. That is where endurance grows. That is where faith moves from theory into practice. You may be wondering why resistance seems stronger now, why doubts surface when you decide to move forward, why distractions increase when clarity begins to form. This is not unusual. When alignment sharpens, opposition reacts. Fear tries to speak louder, delay attempts to discourage, confusion seeks to interrupt focus. Yet these pressures are not signs that you are off course. More often, they indicate that direction has become clearer. Growth attracts resistance because growth disrupts stagnation. There were moments in history when God acted in ways people had not witnessed before, not because He changed, but because the season demanded a new expression of His power. Those moments required trust from the people involved. They had to step forward without precedent, guided only by instruction and faith. These were not crowds seeking attention. They were individuals willing to obey without guarantees. That willingness set them apart, not as superior, but as prepared. The idea of the 0.1% is not about status, it is about surrender. Few are willing to remain consistent when progress is quiet. Few are willing to obey when affirmation is absent. Few are willing to let go of familiar outcomes for unseen purpose. This is why the path feels narrow, not because it is reserved for the elite, but because it requires endurance. What God entrusts next is shaped by what you have already endured with integrity. If this resonates with you, stay present. Let this message settle rather than rush it. Engage with it as an invitation to reflect, not to compete. Support the message so others who are navigating similar seasons can find strength and clarity as well. God's preparation often looks like subtraction before addition. Old cycles lose relevance, conversations change, desires refine. You may feel less interested in proving yourself and more interested in aligning yourself. That is maturity forming. That is discernment growing. When God prepares to do something unfamiliar through someone, He first teaches them how to listen without distraction and move without fear. Faith in this season becomes quieter but stronger. You no longer need constant confirmation. You learn to recognize peace as guidance. You learn to wait without anxiety. You learn to move without forcing outcomes. This kind of faith cannot be rushed because it must be lived. It is built through consistency, honesty, and humility. The new thing ahead will not violate God's nature. It will reflect it. It will require responsibility, not recklessness. It will call for wisdom, not haste. This is why preparation matters. Those who carry uncommon assignments must first develop uncommon discipline. What is forming in you now is not only for your benefit, it is meant to impact others through clarity, stability, and truth. As we continue, we will explore why spiritual pressure often increases before uncommon breakthroughs, how to recognize alignment without falling into fear, and how to position yourself practically for what God is releasing next. This journey is not about chasing experiences, it is about becoming grounded enough to carry purpose well. If you sense that this message is speaking directly to your current season, acknowledge that internally. Let it strengthen your resolve. You are not late. You are not overlooked. You are being prepared for something that requires depth. As alignment deepens, spiritual pressure often becomes more noticeable. This is the stage where many begin to question themselves, not because they are failing, but because growth demands honesty. When God begins preparing someone for an uncommon outcome, distractions tend to increase. Old fears resurface, familiar patterns attempt to regain control. Thoughts try to convince you to settle, slow down, or turn back. This internal tension is not random. It reveals that something meaningful is forming beneath the surface. Throughout biblical history, moments of breakthrough were often preceded by tension that tested resolve. Before paths opened, people had to trust instructions that did not yet make sense. Before provision became visible, obedience was required without reassurance. This is where spiritual awareness becomes essential. Not every thought deserves attention. Not every delay signals denial. Discernment is learning to distinguish between caution and fear, between patience and avoidance. Many chosen ones experience a season where progress feels slower than expected. You may be doing everything right, yet results appear limited. This is often when comparison becomes tempting. Looking at others can create pressure to rush what God is still shaping, but comparison clouds clarity. What God is doing through you may not resemble what He is doing through others, because the assignment is different. Depth takes time. Stability takes time. Endurance takes time. Spiritual opposition often works subtly. It does not always arrive as chaos. Sometimes it appears as discouragement, fatigue, or restlessness. It may sound like logic telling you to abandon what once mattered. It may appear as impatience urging you to force outcomes. Yet strength grows when you choose consistency over impulse. Remaining grounded when emotions fluctuate is a sign of maturity. Those who walked closely with God in earlier generations often faced moments when obedience required courage beyond understanding. They moved forward without knowing the full picture. They trusted direction without seeing outcomes. Their strength was not in certainty, but in surrender. That same pattern still applies. Faith that lasts is not built on constant reassurance, but on relationship. This is why prayer in this season shifts. It becomes less about asking for signs and more about receiving clarity, less about urgency and more about alignment. You begin to recognize that peace often arrives before change. That inner steadiness is valuable. It guards decisions. It protects timing. It keeps you anchored when pressure increases. The idea of being among a small percentage is not about being above others. It is about being willing to go deeper. Many desire results, but few commit to refinement. Many want clarity, but avoid stillness. Many ask for growth, but resist discomfort. The narrow path is narrow because it requires discipline, honesty, and perseverance. Yet it produces strength that cannot be easily shaken. Sacrifice plays a role here. Not dramatic sacrifice, but daily choices. Choosing integrity when compromise seems easier. Choosing patience when progress feels slow. Choosing obedience when recognition is absent. These decisions shape capacity. They expand spiritual endurance. They prepare you to handle what comes next without losing balance. You may notice that certain relationships, environments, or habits no longer align the way they once did. This does not always mean separation is required, but it does mean boundaries are forming. Growth demands discernment. Not everything that is familiar is helpful for where you are going. Letting go does not always happen abruptly. Often it happens gradually, through clarity rather than conflict. It is also important to stay connected during this season. Isolation can distort perception. Having trusted voices that encourage truth rather than pressure keeps you grounded. Community does not exist to rush your journey, but to support it. Even those with uncommon assignments need encouragement, accountability, and wisdom from others walking in faith. If you are feeling stretched right now, acknowledge it without judgment. Stretching is evidence of expansion. Muscles grow under resistance, not comfort. In the same way, spiritual strength develops through challenge. What you are carrying now may feel heavy, but it is increasing capacity rather than draining it. Engage with this message thoughtfully. Reflect on where you have noticed resistance and where you have noticed growth. Share your experience if it helps others feel less alone. Supporting one another builds resilience within the community of faith. As we move forward, the focus will turn toward practical alignment and preparation. How to remain steady without rushing. How to steward clarity wisely. How to walk into what comes next with humility and strength rather than pressure. This next stage is not about striving harder, but about staying aligned. You are not being tested to be broken. You are being prepared to be trusted. What lies ahead requires depth, and depth is being formed now. As preparation nears completion, a noticeable shift begins to take place within you. It may not arrive with dramatic changes on the outside, but inwardly there is a growing steadiness. Decisions become clearer, reactions become calmer. You begin to recognize that you are no longer moved as easily by uncertainty or pressure. This is one of the clearest signs that a season is changing. Before circumstances adjust, capacity does. God strengthens the person before expanding the assignment. Those who step into unfamiliar outcomes are often surprised by how grounded they feel when the moment arrives. That grounding is not accidental. It is the result of lessons learned quietly over time, trust built in private, discipline practiced without applause, faith exercised when outcomes were unclear. This is why the next phase does not overwhelm you the way earlier challenges once did. You are carrying more because you have been shaped to carry more. When God releases something uncommon, it requires stewardship. Growth is not only about receiving, it is about sustaining. Those who have walked through refinement understand that consistency matters more than excitement. They know how to remain faithful when results are visible and when they are not. They have learned that humility protects progress and gratitude keeps perspective clear. You may notice that your desires have changed. What once motivated you no longer holds the same pull. Your focus is sharper, your intentions are simpler. This is not loss, it is alignment. As clarity increases, unnecessary weight falls away. This makes movement easier. Purpose feels lighter when it is carried with understanding rather than pressure. Dreams that once felt distant begin to feel possible again, though they may look different than before. They are no longer driven by urgency or comparison, but by peace and direction. You begin to understand that dreams entrusted by God are meant to serve others, not elevate self. This realization brings freedom. It removes anxiety from the process and replaces it with responsibility. Practical faith becomes essential as you move forward. This is where daily choices matter. Staying grounded in prayer that listens as much as it speaks. Remaining consistent even when progress feels gradual. Acting on wisdom rather than impulse. These practices may seem ordinary, but they sustain uncommon outcomes. Faith is not proven by intensity, but by endurance. Community continues to play an important role. Growth is strengthened when shared. Encouragement multiplies resilience. Walking alongside others who value faith, truth, and discipline keeps you accountable and supported. Purpose thrives in connection. Even those with distinct paths benefit from shared wisdom and encouragement. If you are sensing peace where there was once restlessness, acknowledge it. If you are sensing clarity where there was once confusion, honor it. These shifts signal readiness. They indicate that you are prepared to move forward without losing balance. The next season may still require effort, but it will not carry the same weight of uncertainty. You are equipped differently now. Chosen one, what lies ahead is not meant to impress others. It is meant to fulfill purpose. You were not shaped for attention, but for impact. What God is releasing through you will reflect His nature, steady, purposeful, and grounded in truth. You are not entering this season unprepared. You are entering it refined. Let this message strengthen your resolve. Continue trusting the process without rushing it. Continue choosing integrity when shortcuts appear. Continue staying grounded when momentum builds. What is unfolding will require wisdom as much as faith. If this message has encouraged you, engage with it meaningfully. Support it so others who are navigating similar seasons can find clarity and strength. Share it with someone who may need reassurance right now. Stay connected here, where faith is nurtured, purpose is refined, and growth is approached with understanding. Declare your readiness not with words alone, but with consistency. Walk forward with confidence rooted in preparation. You are not behind, you are aligned, and what comes next will be handled with the depth that has been formed within you.